We use the term good a lot these days, but what does that really mean? Does it mean to be loved by others, to be applauded and cheered for by the people around you? Or does it mean to be morally righteous, to fight the good fight and lift up the people that cannot speak for themselves? The story of Wicked does a great job of exploring the question of what it means to be good through the main duo of Elphaba and Glinda. And this video aims to analyze these characters and their motivations in depth. And thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Now, of course, I'm gonna have to talk about spoilers for Wicked and Wicked for Good. Thus, by extension, there will be spoilers for the stage play and the book, so you have been warned. Now, a great place to start would be with Elphaba's childhood. In the first film, we see that Elphaba has a rough upbringing, and that's putting it lightly. Her father rejects her, her sister is ashamed of her, her birth mother passes away while she's still young, and the rest of the Munchkins look down on her. And this is despite being, at least in status, the daughter of the governor of Munchkinland. Instead, Elphaba's primary caretaker is Dulcibert, a literal mama bear. So, of course, Elphaba knows how it feels to be looked down upon simply for being. She's not in any way at fault for being born green, but she's still a person. That is to say, a sentient being who can think, feel, and express rational thought, and yet she is punished by everybody. Her father, her sister, the Munchkins, and the people at Shiz for simply existing and not being what would be considered normal. Now, while this does give us insight into Elphaba's character, this also tells us a bit about Oz as well. Through her experiences, we see that Ozian society mocks and punishes people who are different. And Elphaba is especially different, not just because she's green, but because she has a unique affinity towards magic, specifically levitation and telekinesis magic. We see throughout the films that she can make objects float as well as push and pull them depending on her needs. And before she can control her powers, they seem to mainly manifest whenever she experiences strong emotion, but mainly anger. When she's angry at Miss Coddle for infantilizing her sister, or the Munchkin children for teasing her, or even when she's just remembering bad things happening to her, that's when her powers erupt. Elphaba harbors a lot of pent-up anger because of how her life has been, and this actually sets up her primary motivation as a character. Her heart's desire. In the first film, she sings The Wizard and I, which is her I Want song, where she declares that she desires to work with the wonderful Wizard of Oz. In the world of Wicked, the wizard is beloved by the people. He's seen as some sort of miracle worker who can fix any problem, thus everybody in Oz adores him and treats him as an authority figure. Thus, Elphaba looks to the wizard when she sees that the animals are being threatened. And sure, Elphaba claims to want to help the animals and fight for them, and while that is true, that's not her only, nor her primary motivation. Wanting to help the animals is just something that she picked up during the course of the film. In The Wizard and I, Elphaba sings about how people would scream for her when they see her and the wizard working together, and this happens before the animals subplot with Dr. Dilliman gets revealed. While she does have a soft spot for animals stemming from her shared experience of being prejudiced against, as well as being raised by an animal in Dulcibert, her primary motivation as a character, the thing that drives her, is to be loved. And this is confirmed in part 2 when she sings in No Good Deed that she realizes that her motivations behind helping the animals might have been selfish. Her standing up for Nessa when Miss Coddle was infantilizing her was performative, the same way she wanted to help the animals and be recognized as a hero. Thus, Elphaba's desire to do good wasn't rooted in a sense of morality, but it was driven by a desire for fulfillment. She wanted to do good things because she would be loved if she did them. It goes without saying that Elphaba has had a difficult life leading to the events of the films. Elphaba has lacked love her entire life, and this directly stems from her childhood, from being shunned by her father and sister to being bullied by Munchkins. And it's why it's no coincidence that Elphaba's favorite flower happens to be poppies. See, poppy flowers are a resilient plant, being able to grow and bloom in tough conditions, and this reflects how Elphaba had to adapt to the world around her if she wanted to live. And it's unfair on Elphaba's part because she was denied certain privileges just because of the circumstances surrounding her birth. The same way it's unfair that if I wanted to stream the first first Wicked film, as well as a lot of my favorite shows, namely Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Rick and Morty, and The Office, I would need 4 separate streaming services just because Peacock isn't available outside of the US. As a content creator, this is a huge pain in the neck, but as a consumer, it's an even bigger pain in my bank account. That's like $40 a month just in streaming subscriptions alone, and that's not even considering that I'd have to pay even more money if I want to watch in higher resolutions, which is a must in this day and age. That's why I save money with the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark. With Surfshark VPN, I can change my IP address, allowing me to access websites and content that otherwise wouldn't be available in my region. Without Surfshark, I couldn't even access the Peacock website where I live, but with Surfshark, I can purchase myself a subscription as easy as that. It's as simple as turning on the VPN, and now all of my favorite shows are on the same platform, meaning I only need to manage one subscription instead of 4. This is a huge help, especially if you're traveling outside of your home country and you want to stay tuned into your favorite shows, or you want to explore what your subscriptions may get you in other parts of the world. But that's not the only thing that Surfshark helps me with. The internet is a virtual goldmine of personal information, and bad actors are always trying to get as much of it as possible, including yours. In this day and age, you don't know who might have access to your name, address, or even your credit card numbers. Thankfully, Surfshark VPN encrypts your online data, allowing you to secure your personal information when browsing the internet, keeping you protected so you can scroll endlessly without a care in the world. So if you're looking for a better browsing experience, go to surfshark.com/thatswack or use code thatswack at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Check out my code in the link in the description and pinned comment down below. Now, regardless of Elphaba's motivations, she's ultimately compelled to do something fundamentally good, which is to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. The issue is that her methods are simply flawed, but more on that later. For now, let's talk about a different character, one that parallels Elphaba in almost every way, and of course, I'm talking about Glinda Upland, otherwise known as Glinda the Good. But she wasn't always who she is, especially because when we first meet her, her name is Galinda. Upon being introduced to her character, we immediately notice that she's the complete opposite of Elphaba. While Elphaba is deemed as unsightly by the people of Oz, Galinda is seen as beautiful. She's bright, cheery, and overly positive, and comes from an incredibly well-off family and is valued by them, considering she was able to get her own private suite at Shiz. She's seemingly perfect and has gone through life with everything handed to her on a silver platter. Unfortunately, this in itself bred a character flaw in Galinda. She's incredibly naive. She's unaware of how the world works and expects everybody to cede to her will and be as seemingly perfect as she is. For example, even though Dr. Dillamond physically could not pronounce Galinda's name correctly, she just believed that he wasn't trying hard enough. Another good example is how she offers to fix Elphaba's problem of being green, even though she had just spent the past minute explaining to Galinda and the crowd of students that her being green isn't an issue. And while disrespectful, I don't believe that this instance is Galinda trying to make fun of Elphaba. I think that she genuinely wanted to do Elphaba a favor in trying to cure her greenness, except that she just cannot comprehend that Elphaba has no problem with being green. And like Elphaba, this part of her character likely stems from her childhood. We're led to believe that Galinda was a spoiled rich kid who never had to grow up facing any serious problems. Contrasting Elphaba, Galinda had everything handed to her, and everybody loved her, but at the same time, she was blind and apathetic to the problems of the world, particularly when it came to the animals. But what truly set these characters apart was the fact that Elphaba had magic and Galinda didn't. Galinda's motivation as a character, ever since she was a kid, as we'd see in Wicked for Good, had always been to be able to use magic. She had everything that she could ever dream of: a loving family, friends she could rely on, and the adoration of an entire nation. Everything except magic. And we see that in Galinda's childhood flashback scene in Wicked for Good. She values magic as yet another way to get people to love her. See, Galinda needs the validation that comes from being special. After all, she loves being the center of attention and having an audience. In the films, she is frustrated by her lack of magical ability because it is a painful reminder to her that she isn't special. While she may come from a rich family, she, as a mortal, is ultimately as powerful as someone like Bach, and doesn't have the ability to bend the laws of nature to her will like Elphaba or Morrible. and yet she wants that feeling of being magical, so she can truly set herself apart from other people. Which is why in that same childhood flashback scene, she withholds the fact that she wasn't able to make the rainbow from the other children at her birthday party, because she wants people to believe that she's special. And it's when you pair someone who has everything but magic with someone who has nothing but magic that you get absolute chaos, as we see when Elphaba and Galinda are roomed together in Shiz. This contrast is ultimately the source of initial conflict between Galinda and Elphaba. Galinda is initially jealous of Elphaba's magical ability, as well as the special attention that she gets from Madame Morrible, her idol and somebody that she has looked up to. Meanwhile, Elphaba finds Galinda to be overbearing. After all, the latter takes up most of the room and constantly asserts her dominance. However, secretly, Elphaba wishes that people would like her just like they adore Galinda. We see their personalities clash as they sing What Is This Feeling, but ultimately they realize how pointless their bickering was and become friends. But what's interesting is the circumstances surrounding the beginning of their friendship. See, Galinda actually makes the first move in becoming friends with Elphaba, but by complete accident. First, she tells Bok to ask Nessa Rose, Elphaba's little sister, to the Ozdust because Galinda is simply not interested in him and wants him off her back. But she's also socially savvy enough to realize that outright rejecting him might not paint her in the best light. But this does make Nessa Rose happy that somebody actually gave her attention. Second, Galinda invites Elphaba to the Ozdust. While yes, this was done with the intention of giving her the ugly black hat and having Elphaba embarrass herself, but to Elphaba, it must have been a pretty big moment. This was the first time in her life that somebody had invited her to anything that wasn't a funeral. To Elphaba, this was more than just an invitation to a dance. This was an invitation to be part of the Shiz community. And Elphaba even takes a liking to the hat. After all, Elphaba loves to wear black, and the hat, being black, matches her outfits perfectly. And while these things were not done with good intentions, to Elphaba it seemed like a peace offering from Galinda. Thus, she does something that Galinda had been pining for in exchange. Elphaba pulling some strings and getting Morrible to take Galinda on as a student of sorcery. And when Galinda realizes what just happened, she makes it up to Elphaba by dancing with her, showing that she accepts her, and in response, the rest of the students begin to accept her too. Note that all of this has happened because of Galinda's self-serving and nefarious intentions. So this begs the question, do intentions even really matter when you commit an act? And what the film is trying to say is that intentions don't matter, but outcomes do, because ultimately it's the outcomes that affect the people around us for better or for worse. To take a real life example, a lot of people like to criticize the popular YouTuber Mr. Beast, and one of the main criticisms is that he only does good acts because he's using people for content. But when this person is restoring people's vision, housing the homeless, and building and maintaining wells in Africa, and in the process giving these communities access to clean water, does it really matter that he's doing these things for content? Good things can happen despite self-serving intentions, the same way good intentions can lead to horrible things, as we'll see in Wicked for Good, but more on that later. For now, I want to talk about another big difference that these two characters have. Their singing voices. Singing as these characters is no easy feat, but their singing voices are so distinct, and that's intentional from a narrative perspective. Elphaba's songs are incredibly belt-heavy. They're powerful, raw, and unfiltered. Defying Gravity, The Wizard and I, and No Good Deed. All of these songs are all power songs with a lot of emotion behind them. Elphaba's songs are loud and emotional, much like Elphaba herself when she feels strongly about something. And from a technical perspective, singing them requires a lot of vocal stamina because of how powerful one's voice needs to be to maintain Elphaba's long notes and runs. And this reflects how Elphaba had to toughen up at a young age because of her upbringing, as well as how Elphaba is just trying to get people to listen to her. Meanwhile, Galinda's songs are bright. In audiophile language, bright sounds are high frequency, crisp, clear, and detailed with an emphasis on achieving a higher pitch. Popular and Thank Goodness are perfect examples of this, but there's also an air of perfection about her songs. On the technical level, Glinda's songs are difficult to sing perfectly because they require so much vocal precision on the singer's part. high soprano lines leave very little room for error, and the lyrics of her songs require a singer with vocal agility and good articulation, much like how Glinda expects herself to be perfect, prim, and proper all the time. It's interesting how these characters are meant to be portrayed by two different kinds of singers, and yet they still end up singing about the same guy, Prince Fiyero, whom we'll now be talking about because he's an important piece of both of their arcs. You see, Prince Fiyero is the primary love interest for both characters, and while he initially seems to be attracted to Galinda, it's ultimately just a surface level attraction. He's pretty, she's pretty, they look cute together. There's no real connection there. But Elphaba sees that Fiyero isn't just some dumb pretty boy, even if he tries to portray himself as such. There's a thematic reason why Elphaba can't stand being in the library and joining the merrymaking when Fiyero sings Dancing Through Life. Because the song is literally about avoiding growth and self-reflection and asking the deeper questions. It's a song about just going through life without thinking too hard and indulging in hedonistic pleasures, like dancing. It's why Galinda dances to the song with so much fun, because at this point in the story, she's naive and doesn't really care about growth. She believes that she's already perfect as she is. Meanwhile, Elphaba can't stand the song because the song is about telling people not to educate themselves and live life apathetically and selfishly, something that directly contrasts Elphaba and her desire to help the animals. But Elphaba also recognizes that Fiyero actually has potential for growth and might actually be the one other person at Chiz who could ideologically be aligned with her. Because Fiyero is one of the few characters not to immediately judge Elphaba for being green. This shows that he's not a shallow person and actually has some level of critical thinking and depth. He's also friends with his horse, Feldspur, and he's the only other character besides Elphaba that we see with an actual relationship to an animal character. It's because of these things that Elphaba sees potential in Fiyero, and it's because of this that he doesn't fall asleep when she frees the lion cub. As a character, Galinda sees Fiyero as a trophy, but Elphaba sees him as a person, and this is ultimately why Fiyero chooses Elphaba, because she challenges him to grow rather than maintaining the status quo. And that's because Elphaba hates the status quo. When she learns that the wizard is a fraud and is the real person behind the silencing of all the animals, she's immediately against it and is ready to start rebelling, namely by stealing the grimoire and resisting arrest. Thus, Elphaba sets down the path of becoming a revolutionary, a freedom fighter, and rebel against Ozian society. In other words, Elphaba becomes a radical. As a character, Elphaba is actually a commentary on how oppression and systemic injustice inevitably breed radicalism. When you treat someone as a scapegoat for too long, at some point, they may break and fight back. And that's what Elphaba does. She believes that if she doesn't speak up, she's complicit in the silencing of the animal voices, and it's okay for people like Dillamond and Dulcibert to lose their rights. And of course, Elphaba doesn't believe this, as they're some of the only people to actually care about her, thus she fights because she feels that she has no other options. But the wizard and Morrible use this opportunity to paint her as a villain. And remember what I said earlier about intentions not really mattering when it comes to acts. Well, Elphaba's short-lived war against the wizard was ultimately well-intentioned, as she wanted to support the animals and give them their voices back, but it never really stuck its landing. That's because Elphaba's actions after part 1 didn't really amount to anything. For Good's opening is her disrupting the creation of the Yellow Brick Road and freeing some woolly rhinos, but this is such a fruitless endeavor on her part. While she does scare some Ozians and throw hands with some guards, ultimately she's only able to delay the creation of the Yellow Brick Road and not completely halt it. While she is able to free some animals, where are they even supposed to go? They'll still be trapped in Oz, where they're treated as second-class citizens, if they're even seen as citizens at all, so they'll still be forced to leave if they want to retain their rights. This shows how, despite her talent and conviction as an individual, she is ultimately powerless. While Elphaba herself believes that she's fighting the good fight, we see that she's not able to create any real or lasting change, and none of that what she actually does matters in the bigger picture. Animals still get captured and lose their voices, the Yellow Brick Road is ultimately completed, and everybody still loves the wizard and hates her. If Elphie was to find any success in her campaign, she needed to inspire the people of Oz, or at the very least, the people whom she was fighting for in the animals. But for a number of reasons, like them just accepting that the effort was all for naught, and of course that stupid lion, she just couldn't. In fact, a lot of Elphaba's issues were caused by being too emotional and acting without thinking. When she discovers the animals captured by the wizard, she sets them free, but in doing so, ruined Glinda's wedding, which she knew was happening at the same time. And by doing this, she undoubtedly hurt her own cause, because now the most influential people of Oz, who were all in attendance at Glinda the Good's wedding, would remember that it was ruined by a bunch of stampeding animals. She also believed too much in the people of Oz. She wanted to expose the wizard as a fraud, but nobody was going to believe it. They already didn't trust her, and trusted the wizard, as it's explained in the song Wonderful, that people didn't care about facts anymore. While she had good intentions, she was just far too unpopular to rally people behind her, unlike Galinda. To fight back against Elphaba, Morrible and the wizard schemed to prop Galinda up as the good witch and parallel the wicked one. The people needed someone to rally behind, and Galinda was the perfect candidate. And here's the thing about her. She wasn't necessarily complicit in the silencing of the animals, but just apathetic. She didn't care about the plight of the animals until she herself was affected when her friend Elphaba chose to fight back and was chastised for it. The beginning of Galinda's arc is actually in part 1 when she changed her name to Glinda. See, in the films, she claims to have changed her name in solidarity with Dr. Dillamond, who would mispronounce Galinda's original name due to biological reasons. This act in itself did not accomplish anything, and yet she received a lot of love for it from her peers. We, the audience, view the act of her changing her name to be fake and performative because up to this point, Galinda had never really taken a stand with the animals the same way Elphaba did. But that's the thing about becoming politically active and thinking critically. It all starts somewhere, and for Glinda and a lot of people, it all started with a simple performative act that even she didn't fully understand. But fast forwarding to for good, Glinda actually starts to genuinely care about what's happening around her. While she does harbor some anger towards Elphaba for ruining her wedding and stealing her would-be husband, she also feels disparaged when she sees an angry mob led by the Tin Man with a motivation to kill her best friend. This is Glinda's true awakening. Everything that she lost, her friend group in Elphaba, Nessa, and Bok, as well as her beloved, was gone because of the wizard's campaign against the animals, and by agreeing to be the figurehead, she was being complicit. Her wedding was ruined, her best friend about to be killed, 2 of them turned into husks of their former selves, and 1 more ending up on the wrong side of the floor. And all of this happened while she turned a blind eye to the injustices in Oz. Thus, the girl in the bubble started to face reality, and only then did things start changing for the better. Glinda confronted Morrible and the wizard and removed them from power, and in the end, she became the most powerful person in Oz and vowed to use that power for good. She was able to save the animals and change Oz for the better, but as for why she was able to do that and Elphaba wasn't, it's pretty simple. Elphaba wanted to break the system of Oz. Everybody trusted the wizard and looked to him as some sort of miracle worker. Hypothetically, if Elphaba did manage to succeed and out the wizard as the fraud that he is, not only would people not believe it, but if they did, it would cause mass chaos. The wizard was a big part of Ozian society, and if people learned that they were just believing in something that didn't exist this whole time, chaos would ensue, and that doesn't sound good to me. Instead, Glinda trusted in the systems of Oz and wanted to work with them to try and make change from within. She gained popularity as the Good Witch, having people love and trust her. That's part of the reason why Morrible and the wizard kind of had to kneel to her wishes. They knew that while Glinda didn't have any magic, she did have the support and adoration of the people. That's something that they themselves understood the power of because they had experienced it firsthand. But she also understood that some people just cannot be worked with because of their self-interest. Thus, she had to remove the wizard and Morrible from the equation. Glinda was able to enact Elphaba's desire to help the animals without causing major collateral damage because she at least created the illusion of peaceful transfer of power from the wizard to her, ensuring that the people of Oz would respect her rule. Glinda trusted the system of Oz, not necessarily the corrupted people running it, and from within, she was able to create lasting change and live happily ever after and all of that. Of course, except for the fact that she believed that Elphaba and Fiyero were dead now, but we'll get to that. Because Elphaba's and Glinda's paths crossed, their lives changed for the better, as we can tell from their song For Good. Glinda helped Elphaba realize that she's worthy of love. If not for Glinda's peace offering, Elphaba would have remained friendless and perhaps truly become someone wicked. Meanwhile, Elphaba helped Glinda realize the importance of critical thinking, and that helped her grow a conscience and learn what it truly meant to be good. Because goodness isn't just about moral purity. Goodness also exists within the context of a society and thus must be adopted by the people. That's why good lies exist. Sometimes being untruthful may actually help more people than spilling the beans. Much like how Elphaba learned that withholding the truth about her and Fiyero's fate was for the better, because she knew that Glinda would have tried to redeem her in the eyes of the people and risk her popularity in doing so. And the song For Good is also such a beautiful piece of storytelling because as a musical piece, it's where the two singers meet in the middle. Glinda's voice in this song is much warmer than it normally is, while Elphaba's is a lot more controlled. They're taking notes from each other. They're singing like their lives has changed for the better because they knew each other. And in the end, both characters got what they wanted. The Grimoire opened for Glinda, allowing her the ability to access real magic, which was what she had wanted ever since she was a child. This cements herself as the most powerful being in all of Oz. Meanwhile, the animals were free, but more importantly, Elphaba gets to spend the rest of her life with Fiyero and having a daily reminder that she is someone worth loving. And I think that that's good. If you made it all this way, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below. And also, a huge thanks to this video sponsor, Surfshark. Be sure to check out the link in the description and pinned comment, and use my code to get 4 extra months on your Surfshark subscription. And with that, I hope to see you in the next one.